Welcome, everybody, to another fabulous episode of The Thoughtful Bro. I am here with Jon Raymond, and boy, am I excited to talk about this book. This book is different, not the kind of book that you're going to encounter every day. I think this book does a lot of things that only literature can do, and it's one of those slim gems of a novel that I love. And when I say it does things that like only a novel can do, it's not only that, but it's doing some very unusual things that I don't really see many other novels doing at all. I can't wait to unpack all of that. But first, we at A Thoughtful Bro are here every Tuesday at 2 to make sure we are talking about what makes great books tick and what makes great authors tick. On A Mighty Blaze, we are live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. We are an all-volunteer initiative at A Mighty Blaze. If you don't know, we've been around for about 5 years since the dawn of the pandemic, connecting writers and readers virtually. At A Mighty Blaze, we're not asking for money ever. If you want to show us the love, just follow us on social media and repost us and tell your friends about us. But if you are going to spend money, I would recommend you spend it on books that are fascinating, probing character studies, books about the two ways we shed this mortal coil, God and Sex, by Jon Raymond. We're going to put a link to buy that book in the chat through bookshop.org, supporting independent booksellers. And regarding questions, as always, just pop them in. We've got some questions ready for you already. Thank you. Any more, just put them in the chat and they will make their way to me. Now, on to this week's guest. Jon Raymond is the author of 5 works of fiction, including Half-Life, Rain Dragon, Denial, and the Oregon Book Award-winning story collection, Livability. As a screenwriter, he has collaborated on numerous films with the director Kelly Reichardt, including Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, Meek's Cutoff, and Night Moves. Jon also received an Emmy Award nomination for his screenwriting on the HBO miniseries Mildred Pierce, directed by Todd Haynes and starring the great Kate Winslet. He was the editor of Plasma Magazine and a contributing editor at Tin House Magazine. His writing has appeared in Zoetrope, Playboy, The Village Voice, Art Forum, Book Forum, and more. He lives in Portland, Oregon. His latest book, as I mentioned, is a haunting character study that asks the questions, what if you made a deal with God and broke it? And what if, even if you didn't quite believe in that God, he still exacted his revenge upon you? God and Sex is a book about ecology, mortality, faith, adultery, and the writing life. The New York Times Book Review said it is a, quote, novel that lives up to its epic title, and Ron Charles, writing in the Washington Post, called it, quote, exceptional, an unexpected answer to readers' prayers for fiction that dares to approach the treacherous border of faith. Jon Raymond, welcome to The Thoughtful Bro.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Yeah.
This is going to be a great discussion. Always great to meet a writer from Portland, as we were talking about in the green room, sort of a great, sneaky, great literary town.
It is surprisingly rich with writers. Like, I mean, I think having Powell's here is actually a huge thing.
Yeah.
And we have a thing called Literary Arts, which is also like the sort of big, literary clearinghouse. They run all the literary stuff, but it's like a hospitable place for writers. It's kind of rad.
Probably and kind of livable too, right? I mean, you can just
it is famously livable, but kind of taken a few hits over the years. Yeah.
Okay.
Although actually, I'd say it's better now than it's ever been. It's like finally all the carpetbaggers are gone. We're just back to being a kind of small, crummy town.
Ideal for the writer. Well, look, God and Sex, it really worked for me. I read it. I feel like it was one sitting, but it was only because I just had to do something. It would have been one sitting, but it ended up being technically 2 sittings. But I just really didn't want to leave this work. I felt like it was very contained and compact. It was like a short story, and I mean that like in the best way, just in the way that it felt like it was kind of made out of whole cloth. It just felt like kind of one idea, one story told continuously. And again, like it was seamless. But before I go on anymore, why don't you just, for those who haven't read it, just give us a thumbnail sketch.
Yeah, well, it's a story of a love triangle between a kind of new age writer. I think he imagines himself a little better than your normal new age writer, but still basically a spiritual writer, and a librarian. This is happening in Southern Oregon, and this librarian's husband, who's a botanist or a forest ecologist at the local college. And so this writer is embarking on a book about trees. He wants to cash in on the new like tree thing that's going, because there's so many books about trees.
The new tree thing.
But
so that's sort of like, about like, trees. There is sort of a tree thing actually going on.
Oh, there's totally a tree thing going on. I mean, it's like, between, the Merlin Sheldrake stuff and the Overstory and the mother tree. I mean, there's like, we are living in a renaissance of tree literature, I think, or tree writing. And so this guy wants to, glom onto that. And so he goes to this forest ecologist just as a sort of research thing, and sort of falls into a friendship with him and his wife. And, as things go in novels, a love triangle emerges. And then at a certain point, though, a miracle may or may not happen in the context of this adulterous affair. And one of the lovers in the triangle may or may not be resuscitated from death. And then it's really just a question of like dealing with the consequences of a possible divine intervention in something, and the sort of contract that has been signed between our main character and whatever this kind of consciousness is out there that's dictating his fate.
Wow. I will have to say that this book, like, it had a very strange effect on me. Aside from like all the literary effects it had on me, I actually like have now made a bargain of my own with the higher power about like something that is like really meaningful to me. And I'm like, I think because of this is obviously because of your book, but like, I feel like I can't break it. I feel like somehow this bargain is like sealed.
I mean, I don't want to, probably this is not a thing you can talk about, but did you offer to give something in return? Like, is that how it's okay? So I
offered to give something that I like, that I consider a kind of vice, in exchange for something that I like profoundly want, that has been escaping me for a long time. And clearly it happened because of your book. I was just in that mind frame. But I'm telling you, you've like sort of converted me to whatever mode of thinking this is, because like I have not engaged in that vice since.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. And I hope that you've received the bounty that you were asking for. I hope that.
Thank you, Father John.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is what we call magical thinking, like maybe with a slight Old Testament sort of like twist, like it's not just give me what I want. It's also, I will suffer, however, in some particular way. Like there's some pain that will be extracted from me for the thing that I want. But like, it is, I mean, this is, I mean, I don't know, for me anyway, it's like definitely like just a running conversation in my head, depending on my desires and my needs, like it spikes at times and goes away at times, but like, I don't know who I'm talking to, but it is like just part of your inner life, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, the other piece of such a bargain, which is like what makes your book work, is that if you then renege, if you are granted what you want and then you renege on your part of the deal, you will pay an Old Testament price for it. And that like is also scaring me right now. I'm like wondering, I'm like, do I really mean this? Am I ready to give this up? So anyway, you've just put me in this frame of mind. And
okay, well, good. I mean, I think to me, like magical thinking works within a certain boundary, I mean, it's like, I grew up in like a pretty new age culture and world, I mean, my parents are that way, and not like freaky or anything, but whatever. I'm a West Coast person, and like, there are those who are like, you create your own reality. You are the one who is in charge of like everything that happens. If you want it, you just need to sort of ask for it. I do not believe in that, and because the sort of corollary to that is that you are responsible for all the bad shit that happens to you also, that you are somehow willing your own fate into order. that does not work for me. But like within a smaller sort of, curtailed context, I think, you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. So I want to, setting aside my own spiritual odyssey that you triggered, let's talk about this book. So it reminded me, I know this may sound like high praise, but I mean this completely genuinely. It reminded me of Chekhov and also Tolstoy. There is a kind of patient and naturalistic probing of like people's everyday lives. And then there's also a great moral reckoning. There's a great moral sensibility without the narrator making it a moralistic story. Like there's sort of a kind of like, there's justice, a kind of divine justice in this world without anybody actually quite exactly believing in divine justice or any kind of overt talk of, institutional religion. But I mean, it's just like, it has a bit of like Brothers Grimm in it. I think it could kind of double as a old Jewish or Christian parable about divine justice. I just thought, I guess I wondered, like, do these comparables resonate for you? Did you feel like you were reaching for something kind of like truly archetypal, or did this just kind of spill out in a kind of very secular way?
It did not just spill out. I love Chekhov, but the real template for this is The End of the Affair by Graham Greene.
Right.
And that's a book that I have found kind of fascinating for a long time. I mean, I like it. I like Graham Greene. I find something just sort of bizarre about him. There's something, but stylistically, I think like a insanely beautiful writer. Philosophically, super fascinating. So for those who haven't read The End of the Affair, I mean, this book's sort of basic outline is really taken from it. And in that case, it's a love triangle taking place in London during the Blitz. And it is very much like Graham Greene's kind of weird Catholicism that is dictating everything. And he had a very like heretical form of Catholicism. Like whether it even really was Catholicism is hard to say, but it definitely had this kind of Gnostic element of a very personal relationship with some sort of unmerciful patriarch, or not even patriarch, but just something, and so a similar kind of sequence happens more or less, but I just sort of saw a way to sort of take that kind of idea and really transplant it into this kind of West Coast alternative spirituality that I like, which is, like you're saying, a bit of everything. It's like It's got your Taoism, it's got your Native Americana, it's got your crystal stuff and UFOlogy. Like it's just all this stuff that is kind of picked and chosen by whoever's doing it. But really does come down to the same sort of consciousness question of like, can I, through my mind, somehow control my fate? Like, is there a way that I'm in control of my destiny? I mean, you end up in this kind of free will rabbit hole really fast in all of these different contexts. And so, yeah, I mean, to me, it's really Graham Greene that's at the sort of root of this, more so than those guys you mentioned, but it's yeah.
Well, I would just say, and so like I had never read that book by Graham Greene, but I started reading it because I heard you say that you had drawn some inspiration from it. And can I just I just want to quibble a little bit? I've never really liked Graham Greene.
Great.
And I couldn't remember why. And and so then I started.
My opinion waxes and wanes about him, but I want to hear.
So I would just say what jumped out at me most is oh God, I find it very difficult to speak negatively about any writer, living or dead, because it's just so hard to be a writer, and I love writing so much. So I don't like being publicly critical, but there's a certain kind of smallness to the spirit of that work, and the way that he is seems quite petty, quite hateful, spiteful.
Yes.
And I just am and jealous. And I just thought, the prose style is immediately evident and gripping and impressive, but within just a few pages, I mean, like the spirit behind the work comes through in the smallest choices. And I just thought again and again, I'm just like, I don't quite want to hear from this person.
No, there is a bleakness and a corrosiveness to his worldview that is that I find like fascinating, but that is I'm incapable of reproducing even if I wanted to. Like I'm just sort of not that sort of mean, And so like that, interestingly, that was part of the sort of pole reversal that had to happen with this book, where it's like, how do you take something that is so like I wouldn't call it petty in my mind, but yeah, something so shriveled in a certain sense, so sort of black, and like do it in a way that I can understand, which is a little more light filled and a little bit more loving, And it's like that was just it was interesting to realize like I couldn't, something very, very profound needs to change in the way that I'm bringing this into my own sort of universe.
Yeah. And I liked your book a lot more for that reason. So I do want to just talk about kind of like the sensibility of the book. I mean, there's something, as you said, shriveled is a wonderful word to describe what I was feeling in Graham Greene's work. But your work, one of the very interesting things it does, and this was brought up by Ron Charles in his review. I mean, he's talking about how rare it is, and I think he even plays on the word miraculous it is to find kind of such Old Testament kind of forces in a book of literary fiction. And and I think your book begins with a quite typical kind of set of characters who are having an affair in a literary fiction genre type work. Like the affair, like they find themselves unconflicted about it. There isn't a lot of kind of moral searching. They're not really thinking about how this will all end. They're just like, oh, everybody has affairs. Divorce is normal, and I thought that like totally allowed the second half of the book to kind of sneak up on me, because it's sort of like these characters really haven't reckoned with the consequences of what they're doing. And yet by the end, they are deeply, deeply reckoning. It's not just what happens, but I mean, the book almost it's kind of like the book of Job. It's like, God, why have you done this to me? Why have you chosen me for this terrible thing? And I just thought the way that you set that up, I was wondering if that was like intentional. If you're like, you want to take this typical kind of liberal worldview that you see in a lot of literary fiction and then draw it into something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few answers to that. I mean, part of it, I mean, this actually does go back to the Chekhov in a way. Like, I mean, I have sort of committed to writing in a kind of naturalist mode and in a realist kind of way. And so, I wanted to treat both the infidelity and the divine reckoning kind of in that sort of mode of like, how would a person actually behave in these situations? And, it's hard to do a pure infidelity plot line these days because of the world we live in. It's just not that dramatic anymore. It's like you can't write the Age of Innocence now. Because the strictures of patriarchy just are not the same. And so the sundering of a relationship, like who really cares, like grow up. But so that allowed me to sort of treat that element of it like in my world pretty realistically. Sure, there are jealous people, there are people who get heartbroken or whatever, but these are mature people who have some experience in the world, and like they, relationships come and go. And so I was able to not put too much stress on it, knowing that it was really moving towards this kind of Kierkegaard thing, where it's like it becomes a much more metaphysical problem that they're dealing with, and you end up with real blood on the walls, not just like emotional heartbreak. And for me, like novels like this, they do ultimately kind of need blood on the walls more than like anything else.
Yeah. Yep. Did you find like the way that Ron Charles, I don't know why I'm always bringing up Ron Charles on this show. He writes a good review.
I suddenly love that guy. He's great.
He loved this book.
As of a month ago, I think he's one of the best reviewers alive. Yeah.
I'm curious if you kind of, I don't know how it went with your agent or when you were trying to sell this book, but was there any kind of like, this is just not quite what you see in literary fiction. Maybe this will be a harder sell or something like that?
No.
Okay.
I happily have a really great editor.
Who's your editor, by the way?
Sean Manning, who is now the publisher of Simon & Schuster. He's like the head guy at Simon & Schuster now. And he's someone that I actually met when I lived in New York. We both went to the New School together at the same time.
Oh, awesome.
It's like one of those amazing stories where it's like, oh, I guess it was a good idea to go get an MFA because I met Sean, who has ended up like being a really huge person in my life.
Right.
And this is only the second book I've actually done with him, but I, happily have in him like a reader who actually cares and, is interested in the stuff I'm doing. And so I don't think that he was thrown by this at all. I think he was able to read it and sort of see it in the context of the other stuff. And yeah, it wasn't like we were going wide with this, it's not, it was basically like, if Sean wants this, then we're done, so it's
right.
So yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It's great when you have that kind of relationship and that kind of like comfort level.
It's a really, I believe me, I view it as a very precious thing. Like, I don't think there are too many writers right now who are like, I have a great relationship with my editor who's like, seems to value what I do. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's a good segue into some of the writer life stuff. Like, one of the things about this book, which is also very similar to the Graham Greene novel, is that there's a lot of the main character in The End of the Affair is a writer, just like author in this book. And there's a lot of kind of talk about the writing life. And I heard you. How you just said Arthur sounded like author, and I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. That's good.
Oh, I thought that was like totally intentional.
No, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I'm like author. I got you, bro.
Never thought about that.
All right. Well, I've heard you say a bunch of eloquent things in this book about the writing life and a bunch of things that I've kind of never quite heard a writer say in quite that way. And I want to dig into a few of them. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things you said in another interview is this is the craft book that you'll never write. So I guess my question, first of all, is like, why, like, will you never write a craft book? And why did you feel compelled to kind of make this your version of that?
Yeah, well, I like a craft book. Like I think those are great. And I guess part of it is like, I feel like you have to probably, people want to read craft books by people who are more successful, it's like, why do you want to read my craft book, but that said, like, this is my fifth or whatever book. And so I have spent a lot of time, sitting at this very desk that's now staring back at me on this video, like, doing this work and, watching the light change in the room and like, having my thoughts. And it's like, it's a very weird lifestyle, it's not what most people really want to do with their time. But I think now, as in my mid 50s, having put in, decades doing this, I sort of am finally feeling like I could call myself a writer, Wow. It is one of those things where you're like, all right, even if I stop tomorrow, I fucking wasted half of my life doing this. So, it's just, a reality. And so I did feel like, and part of writing, I think, is sort of generating these metaphors for writing, part of the unintended sort of side effect is just this like rumination about what it is you're doing and how this is happening. And so I have built up, certain thoughts about the process over time, even though it kind of changes with each project and has its own sort of course each time, but enough so that I was like, usually I don't really like a book with a writer in it, I don't like, I feel like it's kind of like a cop out, but in this case, I was like, well, I do have some things I would like to say that I think are actually pretty deeply felt at this point, because it is, you know, I joke about it, but it is how I've devoted my life. You know, I mean, this is sort of like what I've done, and like it's worth, you know, at least it offered like a handful of paragraphs I could use to sort of get me through different moments, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've been gratified that it seems like other writers have like, you know, recognized it as being an accurate representation of like what the process is like, you know, and it's that's a good enough, you know, that just makes me feel good.
There's one particular passage I want to read, which just like, it just hits so hard. All right, here we go. So he's sort of he doesn't have a lot of success, and his last book was like a total dud. And so he's talking about the aftermath of publishing that last book, and he says, there were no invitations to read at festivals or translations or prize nominations. It's hard to express to most people the humiliation of a failed book. The pain appears so abstract and elective, but I can attest it is very real. It plunges the writer into a cauldron of self-doubt to the point where they no longer trust their own mind. You start hearing ghost conversations behind your friends' words and seeing cruel judgments in your absence from every podcast and year-end best of list. You feel like you're walking around with your nerves exposed and dangling. I was like, brother, that's it, man.
Most people don't understand, you know, but it's a brutal game, you know. It's like not everyone can deal, you know. I mean, it takes a certain metabolism, you know. And yeah, it is, yeah. But you know, the thing that's nice about it is there's a solidarity in it too, you know. Like, I mean, I'm like, you know, the fact that you and I are both writers doing this stuff, like, we get it totally, you know, and it's like an immediate bond with a lot of people. I'm sure it's probably even the same way if you're going to talk to Zadie Smith, you know, but it's like, you know, everyone's got it.
Yep. Everyone's got it. There was another wonderful sentiment in there. You quoted Suzuki, the Zen Buddhist, you know, writer, and Suzuki once said, "Nirvana is seeing something through to the end." And you know, author in this book talks about that, like, you know, the way he's focused and willing to kind of see his projects through to the end, and that is a kind of nirvana. And I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. I thought it was really interesting.
I love it. I love that. Like that aphorism or sentence or whatever it is. Like, I mean, I did end up reading, you know, because this author, Arthur, the author, was going to be this particular kind of spiritualist writer. It kind of allowed me to rummage through some of that stuff, some of which I own, some of which I've inherited from my dad, you know, some of which I like and some of which I don't like. But, you know, and actually I did, you know, have a batch of those of Suzuki books that had been my dad's. But that particular little phrasing I found just really like impressive, and like, the way that it like creates the idea of nirvana or some sort of like tranquility or peace or whatever is implied in that word, without like the work ending. It's just knowing that you're committed, in a sense, is sort of the relief that you get. It doesn't relieve you from having to go and do it. You know, you still have to continue living and producing. But there's just a certain anxiety that can be put aside if you're like, no matter what, I'm going to get to the end of it, you know? And it's, I've found kind of some solace in that, in that particular little Zen. It's not even a koan, that just little statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's connected to this idea that you come across in Hindu philosophy and also in, and obviously Buddhist philosophy, of kind of like, it's just about relinquishing your ownership of the result of what you're doing, right? It's like, I'm going to finish this no matter what the result is. Like, that is that liberating thing that you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. I was just listening to one of your podcasts the other day, or even today, maybe it was. And you were talking to Deborah Treisman, I guess, and talking about sort of having this objective view of the art, like where, or sort of I mean, it was talking about an egolessness, like about not being ego attached to it. You're doing it for the work. It's not for yourself. You're just trying to sort of nurture this sort of third object into being, and it's not about like that sort of Oprah thing of like, I have a thing I have to say, and just sort of foregrounding that sort of personal first person desire, and to me, that also is really helpful. It's like, I have an idea, like, let's try and like fashion this into the best version of this idea possible, but it's not, and yeah, along the way, lots of myself and my soul or whatever will get kind of attached to it, but that's actually just in service to the thing. It's not like, it's not about oneself. Like, to me, that's just a recipe for longevity in this, like it allows you to kind of progress without like self-destructing.
And I just want to go a little bit further into some of these Zen Buddhist ideas. I have only done kind of a little bit of reading about this, but I was rereading recently a book that I loved when I first read it about 20 years ago called Zen and the Art of Archery. Mm-hmm. And this is a book about a German kind of professor who goes over to Japan and studies under a Zen archery guy for like 4 or 6 years or something. And it's really, really interesting. And one of the things, the ideas that was so compelling to me as a creative person, I was, of course, reading it as a metaphor for creativity. And it's the idea that like he gets into this argument with the Zen master. He's like trying to shoot the arrow, and he's like, I'm aiming at the target, and I keep missing. And he's like, well, the thing is that you're trying too hard, and you're actually aiming, and you think that your willpower can make this thing happen. Right. And he's like, and the German guy really has a hard time understanding it, but the Zen master is just saying like, you have to have a kind of purposeless approach, and you have to kind of have no like desire or will to do the thing. And then he says, it will do it, like capital IT. Yeah, like there's no name for it. Like it will fire the arrow for you. So that's like one of the central concepts in this kind of Zen encounter. And I just wanted to bring that back to you. There's a moment in the book where you say about author, like he's talking about writing and says, the moment you give up on an idea, that's when it really comes to life. And I found a kind of a rhyming thought there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I do think, I mean, I was raised in a Buddhist household. Like my dad was a practicing Buddhist and meditated every morning, and, was not dogmatic about it or anything. I mean, not that you probably find too many evangelical Buddhists out there, but like it was just part of the atmosphere of my house. So this is all sort of like some of these ideas of, detachment and, emptiness, absence. These were like very friendly ideas in my own growing up and household, and just feel like pretty normal to me. But yeah, that idea that, and I think there is, I mean, this is part of, what I was trying, I guess, to sort of explore with this book, that sort of underlying, like that the implication of that is that there is some underlying structure or pattern to things that does respond to that relinquishing of control, like that there is some sort of like fairly predictable, not scientific, but some sort of pattern that like when you extinguish desire, then the thing can somehow sort of exist, and it can take a long time to extinguish the desire that you really want to extinguish, but like it is this is just one of the sort of fundamentals of Buddhism, I mean, that life is suffering, and suffering is the product of desire, and desire is the product of illusion, and so this is like the that's part of the that's probably a little bit of what Suzuki is talking about there.
Yeah. I find as an American who's not raised as a Buddhist, I just find like I just find like a kind of weakness in the way I look at life, or a source of suffering for me is this very feeling that like even as a creative writer, that I think like, more work and more willpower and more focus and more industry will always create a better creative product. It's like, that's just, that is the lesson of our Puritan ancestors.
All true. But
Yeah.
and it does take all that stuff though too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, the idea that like a book is going to write itself, that's not going to happen,
Right.
I mean, it's like,
right.
and there is some kind of like delusional sort of desire that one has to have to like do this, I mean, you need to be aspiring to some sort of probably ridiculous kind of grandiosity to like finish a book, I mean, so it's like, I don't want to sound overly wise or tranquil, because it's like, believe me, there's plenty of like, barely underneath the surface. I mean, obviously, like, you don't feel humiliation if you don't feel some desire, so it's like, it's a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to lie down and think it's going to do itself.
Right. But there is some of that. You're just kind of, you have to be.
But there is. Yeah. No,
you have to let the universe work through you, I think. But all right. One other thought about creative writing that I thought was interesting. It wasn't said, it was sort of said outright, but if you look at what happens in the story, so the author, he is here, he comes to the.
I never heard that. Funny.
You were really channeling this. He comes to town. It's like a stranger comes to town story in a way. And, he meets this guy, and then he meets his wife. And by the end of the story, he has effectively stolen this guy's wife, and he's also stolen all of this guy's ideas and put it in his book. And I mean, I think there is just a completely parasitic relationship he has with this couple. And I think the word vampiric is used in the book. But I just wanted to know, were you trying to say something about like the essentially parasitic relationship of writers to kind of the entire world around them?
Yeah, I was. I mean, I've gotten in trouble for it, and it is, one needs to sort of be aware of one's own like carnivorous needs, but it's also, it is the cost of having writers in the world, I mean, people think that this stuff comes from nowhere, but it actually comes from the real world. And like I think part of the writing was like my own ambivalence about this part of myself, that is ultimately really unscrupulous. I mean, I have been willing to sort of purloin things that most people wouldn't, and it's just part of how, for me, this kind of writing happens. And it has its ups and its downs, but
I guess the Graham Greene novel is an example of that.
Right? Well, yeah, exactly. Not even one of them. I mean, it's like, there's a part of me that's like, I should someday write an essay just about all my theft, like, like just to go down the list. I mean, it would be too long, but it's like, I mean, I do think of writing in some ways as a form of kind of collage making, I mean, you're taking things and putting them together, and like they become different by being next to each other, and like you're shaping them into something other than they were, but they are real pieces of time, or they're real pieces of perception, or they're real emotions, or they're real situations. And like I mean, for me, like that's the kind of writing that I like turns me on, where I'm like, oh wow, I'm seeing something kind of real in here, like reading a Mavis Gallant story or an Alice Munro story or something like that. You're just like, this is someone is getting screwed here. Someone is getting, revealed. And to me, that's way more exciting than like spacemen walking around or pirates or something, like I like to see, I like to feel like someone's really watching, and I don't know. Yeah. This might just be rationalization for my own behavior, but it is, but to me, it's how I can absolve myself a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Author was like a terrifically complex character, but I guess I would just say, like, just to go back to a little bit what we were talking about at the top, it's like, it's not that I am looking for a novel to preach to me or a novel to have a kind of biblical moral sensibility in any way, but what I am looking for is a little bit of bass in the melody. And it's like, I just find that, like, there's a lot of stories out there that are just like, oh, it's like, let's try polyamory, and then like, oh, it doesn't work out, and like, oh, there were some divorces, and oops, the end, right? And it's just like, it's kind of wants to be serious, but it's just not really emotionally going really deep. And there's a part towards the end of the book where, in the relationship that develops between Author and Phil, the wronged husband, which I just thought was like made the book for me. I'm like, oh my God, there's like a penance happening here. There's a way that this character is like expressing guilt in a way that, like, I think this character would probably be, not even want to think of it really as guilt, because they're a kind of new age, kind of forward thinking liberal person. Yeah, right. But there is like a kind of something worthy of like the Old Testament in kind of the way that he responds to try to make amends for what he's done.
Yeah, I mean, I think guilt is it, and I think guilt and shame and it is it. I mean, for a long time, I've been wanting to somehow square the circle between like the New Age stuff and the Old Testament stuff.
Yes,
like
here we go.
My mom is Jewish, and so my own life, my own household is dad's Buddhism and mom's Judaism, and like, so it's a fairly, I come to it pretty honestly, but it is also just to me an interesting kind of, an interesting blend that I can somehow, squint and almost see sometimes. And I've tried it in different ways over the years. But like, this one was the one where I feel like it has worked sort of the best in that way. Yes. And like, it is, those, people still read the Old Testament for a reason, I mean, there is a kind of, just a power, and I mean, to me, like, writing, it has to have that kind of moral baseline, like you're talking about. It's and I think it is, in this day and age, sometimes it's hard to frame things in a way where you can actually like have access to that stuff, just because of the world that we live in, that has become so secular and so kind of relativistic in a certain sense. And certainly I am that way. I mean, I'm among the most laissez-faire people imaginable, but like, you do want to find some way to like tap some of that like thunder of like, ancient things.
Oh man, I'm gonna write that down and like put that on my wall above my writing desk. Tap the thunder.
Yeah, tap the thunder. But it is like, and I mean, another thing that I'll just say, like, in writing this book, I mean, it's some of it is like, theological questions, and it is, but I think it's something that is circulating in our politics these days too. As like, you see people returning to the Catholic Church. You see people, I mean, you see fucking, Silicon Valley ostensible, like, Enlightenment kinds of people, like, quoting scripture as part of their, like, political worldview, and it's like, that sense of like finding some very foundational sorts of truths for ourselves, I think, is going on as really, as culturally, as we question some of the basic foundations of reality. I mean, it's like, we are in the process, I think, of some extreme revisions about what people think is real or not, and that are mostly disgusting and horrible revisions. But like, for me, writing this book was a way of like thinking about some of that stuff without writing a political book or a topical book. But that reality probing question, I think, is very crucial right now.
Yeah, for sure. A few other questions from me, and then we're going to take some thoughts from the audience. But I love the style of the work. I thought it was very spare. I know kind of minimalism. That's kind of also something that shows up in the screenplays that you've written. But I thought that as the book went on, you took some really big swings. And I thought some of the nature writing was outstanding. Some of the kind of reckoning with the higher power was great. But I just wanted to read just one brief passage. I am not a nature guy. I think in my bio on my website, I describe myself as an avid indoorsman. But so I probably wouldn't last like a weekend in Portland. But I just want to read this because it really hit me, because what's great about this passage about nature is that it gets below to kind of like the meaning of nature and like sort of like the philosophy and ideas of what nature is. So I just want to read it just to give people a taste. And this kind of writing is all over this book. Here we go. Life never reconciled itself to death. In the entirety of existence, life had never figured it out. How could it? The leaves returned every year, but they weren't the same leaves. The future recurred in a weird way and resembled the past, but it wasn't the past. New people were born who looked like the old people and echoed the old people's lives, but they didn't have any of the old memories. There was obviously some kind of circle in play, but it was a broken, lopsided circle, kicking dust on every previous cycle, keeping the future always out of reach. The circle of time was a cracked mandala, a rolling oblong prison without a window. I mean, that is just like tremendous stuff with like echoes of Ecclesiastes, and yet it's also like fresh and feels modern. Just really wonderful stuff there.
Thanks. That's also childhood doing acid, Yeah.
Oh, so that's it.
Childhood, but
Yeah. But that just really wonderful stuff. And some of the writing. And I just thought also the writing was sneaky in that way. Like as the book went on, I think you took bigger and bigger swings, and so just terrific. I want to just spend the last few minutes here talking about Kelly Reichardt. This is somebody, a film director of indie films. You've written a bunch of scripts for her. Her career has kind of existed largely outside the mainstream, despite having like great some great actors in her films, like Jesse Eisenberg, for example. I think she's got a big film coming out like in a year or something.
No, actually coming out in a matter of weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
Just
it.
at the New York Film Festival yesterday. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. But, so these films that you worked on, I mean, they're about like these kind of marginal characters, often poor, characters who don't have a kind of outside the social safety net. And I saw, you did this small documentary on Vice about her, and you called her films, quote, defiantly small. And I loved that word. I just wanted you to kind of like unpack defiantly small and kind of what it means to have an artist who focuses on those things, and kind of, do you feel like you're sort of part of that same effort?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel very obviously like profoundly connected to the films, like, and I do, for me, they are connected to some, actually 3 of them have come from the fiction. So it's like they are, I feel like it's, the moral universe is sort of continuous for me, but the defiantly small thing is, very particular to Kelly. And it is, we first got together through our friend Todd Haynes, who's a great filmmaker as well. And I won't go into the whole story, but she ended up adapting a short story that I wrote called Old Joy, which is a really small, like 2 guys walking in the woods kind of story, and which for naturalist fiction is pretty generic in a lot of ways. Yeah. I mean, it's I'm proud of the story. It's fine and everything, but it's like nothing you're not going to find in a million books in a certain sense. But Kelly made the film in a way that that so respected the kind of really human little pivots, that like really micro emotional pivots, and just the really human scale contours of the whole thing. And I realized even like almost no one does that, like to make even a small film is to marshal like a pretty significant apparatus and to spend a fair amount of money. And like, you feel, I think a lot of probably filmmakers feel like there needs to be this like, splashiness or something, or there needs to be something kind of loud, and like, Kelly is more in a kind of Bresson tradition that is just enthralled by human people and like by the sort of little moral struggles that people are in. And it's not for everyone, like it is definitely, these films have a certain limited audience for a reason, because there's not that many people who are thrilled by that. But for those of us who are, it's like incredibly thrilling. I mean, it's like such a precious thing to be able to see a film that just like operates on that level. And Kelly is totally rigorous about not letting it go on that, I mean, there's no idea that like, oh, now I can go make a Marvel movie, like it's just, that is just not part of the, the idea of like progress.
And what does that mean to you? What, like to see somebody out there who's like, so, I mean, look, I mean, you are sort of in the same, I'm not even making her in a different category from you, but she is a different person than you. What does it mean to see somebody out there who's not making those compromises, who doesn't want to go mainstream, who's just keeping it real on the outside?
I mean, that's always what I've kind of loved, but like I've been able to see it with Kelly in a super intimate way. And it's been to me like a life lesson. I mean, it's really, truly a blessing in my life that like, we're 20 years into this conversation, and we are, able to continue collaborating on stuff. And a lot of that collaboration is extra artistic, I mean, it's like just our lives are embroiled, and like, she lives nearby and hangs out with my kids, and we have shared friends, and like we are talking about, life and people all the time. And Kelly has a kind of moral reflex that is, and I don't mean moral like as in moralizing or like, censorious or anything like that, but I just mean like really avidly interested in the kinds of like little ethical micro dramas of daily life. I mean, she's an amazing student of human behavior. And it's really fun to be able to have those conversations kind of be able to be reflected in the work itself. I mean, it's I think that's well, and to see someone realizing that that's like enough, that's actually the most interesting thing. Like there's no, you don't need to do big pyrotechnics and stuff, but no, she's an amazing, I mean, Kelly has taught me a lot.
How rewarding. It's like, I mean, one of the things, I'm a pretty social person, and I just like, one of the things that I miss about writing, I mean, I love writing more than anything, but it's not very social. And it just sounds like you've got to kind of, it's like being in a band, you and Kelly. I mean, you get to make art together, which, what a treasure.
It is. I mean, I can't tell you how great it is, because it's obviously, it's great to have your writing where you're like, where every sentence is its own kind of little struggle and moral question. But it's great to be on a team too, and like, or be in a band, and it's like to feel like someone actually needs what you're doing, because I mean,
there it is.
Like that's a huge thing, and it's like, because writing your own books, this is like, these conversations I'm having with you are very rare, so it's like, it is, feeling like it's, and it's part of the nature of books too. I mean, they are, and this actually comes up in the novel, like they are created to be portable. They're created to manifest the absence of the author. I mean, it would be weird if you stood around watching someone reading your book. You are not like a band where you're in communion with your audience. You're not like having a kind of like group experience that way. And film is sort of in between. Like, at least there is some sort of like collective vibe.
Yeah. All right, let's take a few questions from the audience. Got a couple here. I'll put it up. Here we have audience question. I've been struggling forever, all caps, forever, to get published. I sometimes feel like giving up. Advice, please.
Advice for that. Yeah, I mean, that is a toughie. Like, it's so forever, by forever, I'll assume that this person is not like 23 years old or something.
All summer.
I mean, I think there's, Yeah, I mean, so I don't know who I'm speaking to right now, so I'll just give the advice I would give to like a generic person. But like, I think being a good sort of citizen of the art world is really helpful. You know, you have to sort of show up for other people and do things, you know, like much as Mark is doing here, like you do, you know, you participate in the sort of culture of it, you know, and that means going to readings or editing people's stuff, or like even just, I mean, you know, whatever, being in workshops, I don't know, but like, you know, just, yeah, being present to it. And that's where you meet the other people who do this kind of stuff. And you know, the people who are lifers are going to recognize each other and are going to figure it out, you know? So that is, that's one big way. I mean, for me, like it was ultimately important to actually go and live in New York for a minute, like, because that is where a lot of publishing happens. And that's like not necessarily everyone has that possibility, but the reality is that like that's where a lot of publishing actually happens. So what else do you have to do? I mean, I do think writing also, I mean, this is part of the citizenship thing, but like writing for, I mean, sadly, there's not like a magazine economy anymore, but like there is like a different kind of online economy, and there's a lot of ways to write about stuff. And I think writing, especially writing with an editor that exists, is really good training. Like, and it allows you to become less self-centered about it if you're like writing for a deadline and writing under a certain kind of market pressure. Like you just learn to write in a way that is actually, I think, helpful.
Yeah, great. All right, let's take one more here. Audience question: do you ever just want to go 100% film, meaning in your case screenwriting, and not write books anymore? Or are books special in some way?
Books are definitely special. I mean, books to me, like, I mean, writing a script is fun, but it's like, for all the reasons discussed, but like, I don't know, I've heard someone say this. I think this is like a little aphorism about screenwriting. It's like, screenwriting is great. You just have to figure out what to do for the other 23 hours a day.
You're right.
And like, there's so much just like waiting around and screenwriting, so much just kind of, you know, it's pretty rare for it all to congeal. And, you know, and there's a lot of like failed things that don't work, you know, like with writing a book, like for better or worse, you're responsible for it. And like, you either, even if no one will publish it, you can publish it yourself, you know, and like it can become in some way public and you can move on to the next thing. And so for me, just like as an artist, as someone who's trying to kind of like keep moving and like making things, like I have, like books are the only thing I have enough control over to like feel like I am like making a responsible use of my time.
Yeah. I get that. All right. So Jon Raymond, folks, the book is called God and Sex. If you can't tell already, I love this book, and I think it's a rare. Yeah. Oh my God, you got it, man. And it's a rare, and it's a special book, a bit of a throwback book while also being hyper contemporary. Just wonderful. Jon, I end the interview. If you've listened to my other podcasts, you might know this. I end up with the same question as always, which is just imagine the perfect reader for God and Sex, the ideal reader, the one who's just kind of getting it in just the way you hoped it would be gotten in your wildest dreams. Now imagine that this ideal reader finishes God and Sex, puts it down on their lap, looks out the window. Tell me in a phrase or even like a single word, what does this reader feel?
I mean, I might go to the word small. I like small, you know, like I think that is a nice, relieving feeling to feel sometimes. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And of a piece, certainly with the work you're doing with Kelly and just kind of like that small, I think you mean that kind of smallness, but also smallness before the universe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Well, John, this has been such a treat. I'm so glad we actually finally met. This is great. It's one of the pleasures of my life, man. I get to read books and talk to the author. Everybody who tuned in, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your questions. And John, best of luck with this book and on all your future projects, and hope to have you back again on The Thoughtful Bro.
Thanks, and likewise.
See you, everybody.